chosen one. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm not here to comfort your confusion. I've come to awaken a giant who's been sleeping in chains of distraction. I've come to speak not to your feelings, but to your future. Not to your emotions, but to your assignment. For God's sake, listen, right now. Because this is the final step. You don't have time to play anymore. The world is on fire. And you're walking around wondering if you're really called. You are not confused. You are delayed. And if you don't take this step, not only will your destiny suffer, someone else's deliverance will die waiting for your obedience. You were never born to fit in. You were designed to fulfill. That truth is not poetic, it's prophetic. From the moment you entered this earth, your identity carried distinction. Not the kind of distinction that demands attention or applause, but the kind that disrupts average environments. You've always felt different, not because something is wrong with you, but because something divine is right with you. The discomfort you feel in rooms where others blend in is not insecurity. It's a signal that you were never called to adapt. You were called to advance. God does not mass produce. He is not in the business of duplication. He doesn't work like the systems of the world that create templates, molds, and carbon copies. No, heaven customizes. Each chosen vessel is intentionally crafted for a distinct purpose, a unique assignment, a divine mission. The fingerprint on your spirit, your mind, your gift, it's one of one. And the moment you try to conform to the crowd, you betray the code written in your soul. You have to understand something deep. The calling on your life is not optional. It's not a suggestion from heaven. It's a mandate. There's territory only your voice can reach. There are hearts only your presence can heal. There are solutions buried inside your mind that this generation is dying without. That's why the enemy fought you so hard in childhood. That's why rejection came early. That's why confusion tried to cover your identity. Because when something is chosen, hell takes it personally. When you carry purpose, warfare is not a coincidence, it's confirmation. The problem is, because you've always felt out of place, you've interpreted your uniqueness as unworthiness. But being chosen does not mean being perfect. It means being positioned. Positioned to carry weight others can't. Positioned to see what others ignore. Positioned to stand when others fold. You weren't born to go with the flow. You were born to disrupt systems, challenge patterns, and ignite change. Your fulfillment is not in being accepted by men, it's in being aligned with God. That's why your path has never been easy. Favor attracts frustration. Anointing invites attack. When you're chosen, your life gets processed differently. The same fire that destroys the ordinary purifies the chosen. While others are celebrated for blending in, you are refined for standing apart. Your pain wasn't proof of abandonment, it was proof of preparation. Every detour, every delay, every season of silence was designed not to break you, but to build you into the version of yourself that could carry destiny. And let's be honest, trying to fit in hasn't worked. You've tried to minimize your voice to make others comfortable. You've dimmed your light, hoping not to offend those still in darkness. But all it's done is drain you. Because the moment a lion starts acting like a sheep, anxiety becomes inevitable. You were never created to follow the herd. You were created to lead it. But leadership comes with loneliness. It comes with misunderstanding. It comes with a cost. That's why few walk it. But the few who do shake nations. It's time to break out of the prison of public opinion. You weren't selected by culture. You were sealed by covenant. And heaven does not apologize for how it marks its own. You're not too much. You're not overthinking. You're not too deep. You're just not common. And the uncommon always feels uncomfortable in shallow places. You can't shrink into your calling. You have to grow into it. And that means letting go of the need to be liked and grabbing hold of the necessity to be used. Stop asking for permission to be who God already called you to be. Stop explaining your journey to people who were never meant to understand your destination. The chosen don't need to be validated. They need to be activated. Heaven is not looking for those who are impressive. Heaven is looking for those who are available. The earth is not suffering from a lack of talent. It is groaning for the rise of the chosen. The ones who stopped trying to fit and finally started to fulfill. You've been called, you've been marked, and the world doesn't need another imitation. It needs your original obedience. Delay is not denial, but delay without discernment is destruction. That truth might disturb you, but it will also deliver you. Because the chosen don't just need faith, they need timing. Heaven operates on order, and while the call of God on your life is irrevocable, the manifestation of that call is deeply tied to timing, instruction, and alignment. The enemy knows he cannot cancel what God has spoken, so instead he attempts to confuse your sense of timing, because a chosen one outside of divine timing becomes vulnerable to decisions that destroy. Many of God's chosen don't fail because they weren't called. They fail because they moved too soon, or far worse, waited too long. That's the danger of spiritual ignorance. You can carry fire, but if you lack discernment, you'll burn the field instead of planting in it. You can be anointed but still be absent from your assignment because you're busy negotiating with fear, comfort, and second opinion. God is not obligated to honor your feelings. He's committed to His timing. And if you miss that, you may find yourself wandering in a wilderness He never planned for you. Look at the Israelites. Chosen, delivered, equipped, but still delayed. A journey that should have taken 11 days dragged on for 40 years. Why? Not because God changed His mind, but because they couldn't recognize the moment. They saw giants when they should have seen territory. They asked for signs when God was demanding steps. That delay wasn't divine, it was disobedience. And some of you are mistaking disobedience for waiting on God, but God has already spoken. You don't need another confirmation, you need courage. Doing discernment is heaven's gift to those serious about purpose. Without it, delay becomes a death sentence. Opportunities expire, seasons shift, and what was once an open door becomes a memory of what could have been. The painful truth is that some windows don't reopen. You don't get to live in rebellion and still expect revival. God is merciful, yes, but He is not casual about assignments. His timing is tied to people, cities, generations. And when you delay, it's not just your blessing that's on the line, it's someone else's breakthrough. When Samuel came to anoint David, David didn't schedule it, he was just ready. When Jesus called Peter, Peter didn't say, let me pray about it for a month. He dropped the net. But many of today's chosen are still waiting for a convenient moment. Let me help you. God's instructions rarely feel convenient. They are often disruptive, uncomfortable, even offensive to your logic. That's why discernment is critical. Without it, you delay until destruction comes knocking. And yes, delay can look spiritual. You'll cloak it in phrases like, I'm just being patient, or I need more clarity. When in reality, you're just afraid to move. Fear dressed as wisdom is still fear. The chosen don't wait forever. They watch, they listen, and then they move. Because in the kingdom, delayed obedience is disobedience in disguise. If God told you to build, build. If He told you to leave, leave. If He told you to speak, speak. The consequences of delay are not always visible immediately, but they are certain. Discernment is knowing what God is saying now, not last year, not what He said in the past, but now. The Spirit moves in seasons, and if you're not sensitive, you'll be planting in a field God already left. You'll be watering what He's already uprooted. The blessing is not in the delay, it's in the obedience in time. God's will has a rhythm, and you cannot afford to be out of sync. Delay becomes dangerous when it becomes comfortable. Some of you have made your waiting room into a permanent residence. You've decorated it, settled in it, prayed about it, but God never called you to stay there. He called you to move through it. Delay without discernment turns preparation into procrastination. And procrastination for the chosen is not harmless, it's destructive. Your destiny has a schedule, and purpose does not pause forever. Heaven is not asking if you're ready, it's waiting to see if you're obedient. Your pain is not personal, it's prophetic. That statement may sting at first, but when it sinks into your spirit, it will begin to heal what bitterness tried to bury. You've been asking, why me? When heaven has been whispering, because I chose you. What you thought was a punishment was actually a prophetic push. The very thing that crushed you wasn't designed to destroy you. It was heaven's strategy to call you into divine alignment. See, the chosen rarely experience an easy life. There's a cost to being called. When you carry something eternal, your life will be marked by what feels like extreme contradiction. On one side, you feel favored. On the other, you feel forgotten. You have insight, but you're surrounded by confusion. You've got a word from God, but no platform to release it. You know you're called, but you're stuck in a season that looks like chaos. That's because God doesn't train His chosen in public. He trains them in pain. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. Pain is one of God's sharpest tools. It cuts deep, but it also carves purpose. The crushing was never random. Heaven doesn't waste suffering. Everything you endured was calculated. Every betrayal, every loss, every delay, every sleepless night, it all carried a prophetic assignment. Pain exposes what comfort conceals. And until you were broken, you couldn't hear clearly. Until you were emptied, you couldn't be filled rightly. You were too distracted, too attached, too opinionated. But pain brought you into focus. It was your wilderness, not your end. God doesn't crush what He hasn't called. If He allowed it to break you, it's because He needed to remake you. You were carrying too much ego, too many assumptions, too much fear masked as wisdom. So he allowed the breaking, not to embarrass you, but to extract the real you, the version that hell fears and heaven requires. Some things don't leave your life until pain walks in, because pain forces a confrontation, not with people, but with you. And here's the mystery. While you were praying for breakthrough, God was using breakdown. Because the thing about prophetic pain is that it often disguises itself as loss while it's leading you into alignment. That job that fell apart, it was redirecting you. That relationship that crushed you, it was uncovering your misplaced identity. That season of being overlooked, it was preserving you from exposure you weren't ready for. The pain felt personal, but it was actually prophetic. It was aligning your life with your assignment. The chosen often confuse the pain of pruning with the pain of punishment. But God prunes what He intends to multiply. If He didn't care, He would have left you alone. But He loves you too much to let you grow wild. So He cut some things, He severed some ties, He shut some doors. And yes, it hurt. But without that cut, you would have stayed stuck. Pain made you pray again. Pain made you listen. Pain made you repent, release, and realign. Prophetic pain always precedes purposeful promotion. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he was sold into slavery. Before David wore a crown, he hid in caves. Before Jesus resurrected, he bled in Gethsemane. Do not despise the crushing. It is proof that you are carrying oil. That oil, that anointing, only flows from what has been pressed. You thought you were dying, but God was extracting destiny. You thought you were finished, but God was finally starting. What crushed you was never meant to be your grave. It was your gateway. A divine collision between heaven's agenda and your surrendered will. God did not let it break you to bury you. He allowed it to birth something deeper. A version of you that can no longer be manipulated by applause or crushed by rejection. A version that walks with discernment, speaks with authority, and stands in power. So no, your pain was not personal. It was a prophecy in disguise. The final step is not a leap, it's obedience. We often imagine the finish line of destiny as some dramatic, cinematic moment where everything shifts at once. But in the kingdom, the shift doesn't happen through sensation, it happens through submission. God is not waiting for your excitement. He's waiting for your execution. The final step is never about how loud you shout, how much you believe, or how inspired you feel. It's about one simple thing. Did you obey what He last said? Miracles don't follow motivation, they follow instruction. And that's the part that many chosen ones miss. Motivation can move your emotions, but it cannot unlock your next level. You can cry, you can declare, you can even fast, but if you don't obey, you delay. The walls of Jericho didn't fall because the people were excited. They fell because the people followed directions. The Red Sea didn't part because Moses was passionate. It parted because he stretched out his staff when God told him to. The final step is not magic. It's measured obedience to a specific word. That's why the final step is often the hardest, not because it's complex, but because it demands surrender without full understanding. Obedience is rarely glamorous. It usually looks like small, precise often uncomfortable movements. It's giving when you feel broke, speaking when you feel insecure, walking away when you feel attached, staying still when everything in you wants to run. Obedience tests the part of you that still wants control. It asks, will you trust me when it doesn't make sense? Because God will never compete with your opinion. He will wait for your obedience. But the truth is, many chosen ones keep circling the same mountain because they're waiting for a leap when God already gave them a step. You don't need another prophecy. You don't need another sign. You need to do what God said last. Go back to the last instruction and ask yourself, did I obey it fully? Or did I edit it for my comfort? Partial obedience is still disobedience. Delayed obedience is disobedience in disguise, and God does not bless what He did not instruct. We shout about favor, but favor follows alignment. You want the door to open, but are you even standing at the right door? You want the next season, but have you even completed the current assignment? The final step isn't about hype, it's about honor. Honoring the process, the voice of God, and the details that seem insignificant, because in the kingdom, obedience in the small unlocks authority in the great. You don't conquer Goliath without first submitting to the field and the sheep. It's easier to chase destiny with excitement than it is to sit in obedience with patience. But here's the mystery. The chosen are not elevated by energy, they are elevated by execution. The heavens move at the sound of yes, not the emotional yes, not the temporary yes, but the kind of yes that builds when no one sees. The kind of yes that follows through when fear whispers. The kind of yes that chooses obedience over outcomes. Because sometimes God won't tell you what's next until you finish what's now. You don't need a leap. You don't need a stage. You don't need a crowd. You need obedience. That's where the breakthrough lies. That's where the power shows up. That's where the prophetic becomes practical. Obedience is how you turn revelation into manifestation. It's how the chosen move from being called to being commissioned. The final step doesn't look like a finish line. It looks like a door only obedience can unlock. Isolation is God's incubator for revelation. Before God presents His chosen, He hides them, not to punish them, but to prepare them. If you've been feeling unseen, forgotten, or buried, you're not in a grave. You're in a garden. God doesn't reveal power in public until it's been processed in private. That loneliness you've been resenting is actually the sacred space where God is shaping your voice, your vision, and your value. You've been set apart, not cast aside. The chosen ones are always hidden before they're handed platforms. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before confronting Pharaoh. Joseph endured prison before he touched the palace. David was anointed as king, yet returned to the field with sheep. Even Jesus, the Son of God, lived in obscurity for 30 years before his ministry began. Why? Because what is built in hiddenness is what sustains you in exposure. If God put you on display too soon, the weight of public recognition would crush a character not yet refined. Isolation feels like abandonment, but it's really alignment. It's where distractions die and discernment is born. When you're surrounded by noise, it's easy to confuse validation with value. But when God isolates you, He silences every other voice so you can finally hear His. He strips away the opinions, the applause, the comparisons, not because you're unworthy, but because He wants to show you that your identity is not up for public debate, but that it was settled in heaven long before anyone knew your name. Many chosen ones sabotage their own development because they rush out of the incubator. They crave exposure more than equipping, but exposure without maturity is a setup for collapse. If you step into visibility before revelation is complete, the platform will magnify your wounds instead of your wisdom. That's why God hides you, not to delay you, but to develop you. You're not missing out, you're being made. And when it's time, no man, no system, no devil in hell will be able to stop the unveiling. Isolation also reveals what comfort conceals. In the crowd, you can fake strength. In silence, you're forced to confront your inner landscape, the broken thoughts, the deep fears, the buried insecurities. But it's in that raw place that true intimacy for God is birthed. He's not just preparing you for a moment, He's preparing you for a mantle, and mantles are not given to the loudest voice. They're entrusted to the most surrendered heart. Revelation doesn't come to the busy, it comes to the still. This is why God removes people from your life during isolation. You thought it was rejection, but it was protection. Some people can't go where you're going. They were loud in your comfort season, but silent in your crushing season, because God didn't assign them to your becoming. The ones who are supposed to walk with you in purpose will recognize your wilderness and still stay. Everyone else was meant to fall away so you could stop leaning on them and start leaning on Him. In the incubator, God doesn't just give you vision. He gives you strategy. He shows you the blueprint that can't be downloaded from a podcast or a seminar. He gives you heaven's instruction, tailor-made for your voice, your territory, your generation. That's why you felt out of place trying to imitate others. Your anointing wasn't designed to copy, it was designed to consecrate. And consecration only happens in private. The silence of isolation isn't empty. It's sacred. God speaks in whispers there because He's drawing you closer. He's not hiding from you. He's hiding you. Because when the time comes, He doesn't want you recognized for charisma. He wants you known for authority. And authority is not given to the visible, it's given to the obedient. So stop cursing the cave. The cave is your classroom. The silence is your syllabus. The solitude is your strength. When you're finally released, it won't be for applause, it will be for assignment. And by then, you won't crave the spotlight, you'll crave impact. Because revelation born in isolation doesn't seek attention, it seeks transformation. Destiny doesn't respond to emotions, it responds to decisions. You can cry in the cave or walk into the call, but either way, heaven is waiting for your movement. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable. Feelings will fluctuate, but destiny demands focus. You can weep, but after the weeping, you still have to choose. Because tears don't trigger transformation, decisions do. The chosen are not preserved by how they feel. They are propelled by what they decide. If your obedience is tied to your emotional state, you will never walk in consistent purpose. There will be days when you're discouraged. days when the oil feels dry, days when the applause is silent and the warfare is loud. But destiny doesn't pause because you feel tired. Purpose doesn't bend because you feel uncertain, and God doesn't adjust His plan to fit your comfort. He calls you to conform to His will. That's why the final stretch for many chosen ones is not about warfare, it's about willpower. Will you choose to keep showing up when no one claps? Will you choose to speak when fear is screaming louder than faith? Will you choose to build when the resources aren't matching the vision yet? Because your next breakthrough is not waiting for your tears. It's waiting for your yes, a tenacious yes. Heaven doesn't move on pity, it moves on principle. You can pray all day, but if you don't make the decision to walk in what God showed you, the promise will remain potential. Look at Abraham. He didn't just believe, he left. Look at Esther. She didn't just fast, she stepped in. Look at Jesus. He didn't just pray in Gethsemane. He got up and fulfilled the cross. Every move of God in history was marked not just by divine power, but by human decision. Someone had to decide. The cave will always be there. It's the place of process. The place where emotions are loud and clarity feels distant. But the cave was never meant to become your address. You can cry there, but you can't stay there. There comes a point when you have to wipe your face, stand up, and walk forward in faith. Even when you're trembling, even when you don't have all the answers, because destiny doesn't wait for confidence. It honors commitment. And don't confuse delay for direction. Just because you feel stuck doesn't mean you are stuck. Most of the time, the breakthrough is already available. It's just waiting on your decision to act. God already spoke. The word already went forth. The promise already exists. The real question is, will you align your decisions with what He's already declared? Emotions can be indicators, but they're not leaders. You're not called to be led by your feelings. You're called to be led by the Spirit, and the Spirit doesn't cater to comfort. He trains you for dominion. He's not trying to make you feel better. He's trying to make you move better. That's why it's uncomfortable. That's why it costs. Because every major leap in destiny is preceded by a decision that defies your emotions. If you wait to feel strong, you'll stay weak. If you wait to feel ready, you'll stay unprepared. But when you decide to move with what you have, even if it's just 5 loaves and 2 fish, heaven will multiply your obedience. You don't need to feel anointed. You need to decide to walk like someone who is. Because God doesn't anoint the emotional. He anoints the available. And availability is not a feeling, it's a decision. So the next time your emotions scream, sit down, you respond with a decision that says, stand up. Because destiny isn't moved by your tears, it's moved by your choices. So now, hear me and hear me well. You are not random, you are not overlooked, you are not late, you are chosen. But being chosen doesn't mean you wait, it means you move. Not by emotion, not by assumption, but by revelation. The last instruction you received is still speaking. The silence you're in is still sacred. The crushing you endured is still producing oil. And the door you're waiting for, it's already unlocked, it's just waiting for the real you to walk through it. You don't need another confirmation, you need conviction. You don't need more inspiration, you need impartation. God doesn't bless potential. He blesses obedience. And obedience is not an event, it's a lifestyle. You can't walk into kingdom destiny with a democratic mindset. This is not about your feelings, your followers, or your frustrations. It's about your function. And until you step into it, the earth will remain hungry for what you carry. So today, not tomorrow, decide. Decide to obey. Decide to release. Decide to become. Because heaven is not waiting on your excitement. Heaven is waiting on your execution. And when you move, the wind will follow. When you obey, the oil will flow. When you step, the path will open. Not because you felt ready, but because you finally understood. Being chosen is not a title, it's a responsibility. Walk in it.